Chair, over to yourself.
Right, I'll start with the housekeeping as normal. Bear with me. May I remind everyone present this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute yourselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a committee member wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up if they can be seen, or to use the raise hand function? If a committee member raises their hand via the function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn the camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address the chair, please could all participants ensure their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be both seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of myself and/or Democratic Services Officer Amy as soon as possible. If required, participants can dial into the meeting using a telephone. Telephone number was provided on the invite. If for any technical reason any person party to the proceedings is unable to hear, then the hearing will be adjourned for a short time to allow contact to be made. It's important to remember that all parties must hear all the proceedings unless they themselves decide to leave. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of myself or Democratic Services officers only. Okay, welcome to the Planning Committee on Thursday the 20th of July at 4 o'clock. It is a remote meeting. You may be surprised by the brevity of the agenda. There was going to be quite a large application as part of the agenda. It was discussed at the agenda conference, but the agents have since withdrawn it, which is why it is a smaller agenda than we'd expect. So we can start. Item 1 is apologies for absence. The only one I've got is Councillor Ian Buckley. Are there any other?
No others to myself, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anyone know of any? No. Item 2 then, the minutes of the meetings held on the number 1 on the 18th of May 2023. It's the special meeting we had, and the minutes of the meeting on the 25th of May 2023. Can I take these as agreed? Has anyone got a comment? I see no hands, so I take that as agreed. Thank you very much.
There were certain actions on the 25th.
What was that?
Consultant basically being appointed.
Yes, that's, I think, still in the I mean, we agreed that it would happen. I think it is still happening. I'm not sure that it's going ahead. Ian, have we started that process or finished up?
Sorry, Chair, did you ask me then? I was being
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was being called from outside the room, so I just was
right.
deflecting that. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, basically the question was about the appointment of the consultants for the appeal to the appeal forward on our behalf. Is that in hand?
I can't. Sorry, I can't advise. I've not been involved in that, so I don't know what the status is.
James, then.
Yeah, I can advise. Yeah, so we're proceeding with the consultants who provided advice at the meeting.
Okay, though.
So the appeal hasn't officially started yet. We're still awaiting correspondence from PEDU.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, can I just confirm then that we are, as a committee, approving both sets of minutes as an accurate record?
I see nobody disagreeing. So
yes. Can I take yourself as moving and Councillor Hodges as seconding?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Right. Item 3, declarations of interest and the nature of such interest under the Code of Conduct, including whipping. I see no hands yet again, so I assume there are none. Item 4, building regulation applications and other building control matters determined by the head of sustainable development under delegated powers. You had the report before you. Can I take that as read and approved? I see no. Can someone move in second, please?
I'll second.
Nick, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Charles. Item 5, planning applications determined by the head of sustainable development and delegated powers. Similarly, Anthony, you got your hand up?
Yes, Chairman. I appreciate these are delegated powers, but can I just refer members to page 42 of the agenda? Page 42, if I can find it quickly, refers to a PNT application in respect of a mobile phone mast on land at Hickman Road, Penarth. We don't know, obviously, from the application what land it is, whether it's on the pavement or within private property. But I have to say it's outside my ward, but it's on the borders of my ward. I'm very concerned about this application. Looking to 45, 46-foot mobile phone mast right in the middle of the town centre, and also within the conservation area, I assume. I'm just wondering whether Ian could give me any further information on this, please.
The detail is actually on the council website, on the plan, on the
Yes.
On the planning portals.
We're having to approve this tonight under the delegated powers.
Yeah, but it was consulted on and so forth under the normal process. It's near Westmill School on the pavement there. Ian Robinson, perhaps you can give a bit more.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the detail of it. I could certainly follow up after the meeting.
It's 00440 PNT.
I've made a note. Yeah. I've made a note of it on my page, so if it's okay, I'll come back to you after that.
Yes, okay, Chairman. But I think these mobile phone masts cause a lot of concern in areas, and I appreciate the local members will have had their opportunity to comment on it. But we're seeing rather too many of these very high masts put in conservation area, in areas which perhaps are not entirely suitable. Thank you. I've made my comments.
I mean, Eddie, you have your hand up. You want to comment on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as part of the normal process, isn't it? We're all consulted, the board members in particular, and if they're not happy, or we're not agreeing with the office delegation, then we can ask for it to be called in. But that's normally done prior to the actual planning committee taking place.
Yeah, we don't normally bother.
I would suggest that if board members have already looked at it, then there's no concerns.
Yeah. Moving on, then can I take item 5 then as accepted and as a report? I'll move that. Can someone second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Charles. Item 6, appeals. Ian Robinson, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. There's a list in the report of appeals received. I know we don't normally go into much detail on the ones that received. We look at the decisions, but I will just flag a couple of the appeals received. A number of these relate to delegated decisions that committee won't necessarily have seen or be aware of, but there was just 2 there to flag, which is 36 Pill Street, Cogan, which committee saw a few months ago. That was where the extension to the building was built overlapping the boundary of the neighbouring property. And that was refused at committee, so that'll be an interesting one to see how the inspector deals with that issue and kind of the weight they give if to kind of the fact that it's overhanging the boundary. And the second one just to note is 101 Port Road West, which was an enforcement appeal again, which committee saw a few months ago. It was that semi-detached property where they changed the roof tiles from the kind of the consistent tile in the street to a black slate. So again, I think that'll be an interesting decision when we see that. In terms of decisions, there's 2 decisions in here. One was 25 Morley Street in Barry. That is a case where the council approved a 2-storey side extension to be an extension to the existing house, but it subsequently became apparent that the extension was being occupied as a separate dwelling. The applicant then applied to retain it as a separate dwelling as opposed to an extension. The street, although there's a number of obviously existing houses in the street, it is in a C2 flood zone, so the highest risk flood area, and the appeal was dismissed on the basis that notwithstanding the fact that it's an existing residential street, planning policy is to not encourage more houses in a high risk flood zone where you're intensifying kind of the level of people that would be subject to flood risk. So the inspector dismissed the appeal. There was a second reason as well. The inspector felt that there was insufficient private amenity space to serve the two dwellings. It was quite a tight, constrained site. So splitting it in what was already quite a small garden into two was considered to be inadequate outdoor space to serve the occupiers. And then the second one is land to the west of Woodham Park in Bury. It's okay, I'll just briefly share my screen with the plan of this just to illustrate the way that I'll describe it. This was a decision where there's a plot of land off Woodham Park, and we received a planning application relating to just part of the land. So the plot as a whole is split into two separate ownerships. Now, the main issue we had here was that the applicant was not agreeing to a affordable housing contribution or affordable housing provision on site. The 4 dwellings in Bury doesn't meet the threshold, but the view we took was that it's not acceptable to subdivide a development site in order to avoid making contributions towards affordable housing. So in this case, clearly the site as a whole could contain a number of dwellings that would require an affordable housing provision on site and a contribution. So we refused it, and the key reason was that it was subdivision to avoid those contributions. Now the applicant argued that because it's in 2 separate ownerships, they're not in control of what happens on the other side. The inspector took the view that there's no reason why 2 owners of 2 different parts of a site can't have a conversation and come to an agreement regarding the development of the site as a whole. And even if that weren't the case, there's no reason why the pro rata contribution couldn't be delivered for the first part and then subsequently when the second part comes forward. The other issue was that the kind of fairly arbitrary, if you like, awkward subdivision of the plot meant that the development, the way it addressed the street, if you take into account how the other part would have to be delivered, was quite awkward. So obviously the holistic development of this site would enable a much more appropriate form of development in the way it addressed the street. So the inspector agreed that for design reasons, it also wasn't acceptable. Just sort of flag that. It's just quite a useful principle. Obviously each case on its merits, but it's a useful principle for us to rely on, I think, when the next time we see somebody trying to avoid contributions by subdividing a site. The third appeal to note, it was just one that was received in relation to an enforcement notice we served relating to offence, but the report just notes that the appellant didn't submit their appeal in time, so the appeal was invalid, so the enforcement notice has now taken effect. That's at 20 Summerland Close in Landock.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any questions from the committee? I see no hands, therefore move we note. Can I have a second? Nick's nodding. Thank you. I'll take that as a right. We now come on to our trees. We have the first part, which is the delegated list, which I move we note. Again, can I have a second? Again, Nick has put lots of hands up. So take your pick, Amy. And finally, then
Councillor Williams, Chair.
Thank you. And finally, we come on to the item 2, trees 2, which is to confirm the tree preservation order number 1, 2023 for a silver birch tree in the front garden of Stably Hir, Penmark. Again, Ian, I think this is one for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. The report shows some photographs showing the tree. I've also got a kind of a street view here from December 2021, but you'll note from the trees in the photos in the report that the tree looks in a similar condition now. The benefit of this one here is it just gives a bit of a wider kind of context and a wider view of the tree. We received an application, a notification to remove this tree within the conservation area. It's not a TPO tree to start with, but the owner has to notify the council its intention to remove the tree given its location in the conservation area. The council is then afforded the opportunity of putting a preservation order on the tree if it feels that it contributes positively to the character of the conservation area. In this case, we felt that the tree did contribute positively towards the character of the conservation area. We carried out what we call a tempo assessment, and that concluded that we would be reasonable to apply a tree preservation order. That preservation order was served in April of this year, and we did then receive an objection from the owner of the tree, and the objection referred to kind of, the nuisance of branches falling down, etc., which very rarely would be a good justification in our eyes for allowing the removal of a tree of this type. The owner also considered that given the close proximity of the tree to the dwelling, it was likely to cause damage to the dwelling and the property, and that there had been some remedial work done to the property in the past, and they considered there was a good chance that was caused by the tree. Rather than simply dismissing that and seeking to confirm the TPO, we have gone back to the owner to ask for further evidence to suggest that previous damage had been caused by the tree, or that there was a compelling likelihood of damage, going forward. But whether that was from an arboriculturalist or surveyor, and we made a couple of attempts to ask for further information. We haven't received anything further, so we feel we're left in the position of dealing with this now kind of as it stands. And while we acknowledge that the tree is in relatively close proximity to the house, we don't feel that there's any compelling reason to not confirm the order. There's no apparent damage being caused by the tree, and it's worth noting that this doesn't mean that at some point in the future, if the tree did start to cause an issue, that it couldn't then be removed. So the recommendation in the report, as you can see, is to confirm the TPO on this tree.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Champion, you have your hands up.
Yeah. We want to get rid of the trees because it's a nuisance. It's not to do with any sort of other work. Is that right?
Yeah, the reasons in the objection that we received, yeah, they were sort of twofold. One was the kind of the nuisance of the fallen branches and things like that. And I took the other reason as being kind of the more substantial reason, that the kind of the suggestion of a likelihood of damage or previous cause of damage. There's no suggestion that it's because it's affecting other work, like if they want to extend or anything like that. It was more about just the proximity. But just because a tree's in close proximity to a house doesn't automatically mean it's going to cause damage. So we would take kind of the precautionary approach in favour of the tree, if you like, that until there's any kind of compelling suggestion that is happening, the tree should stay.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Bruce, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yes, I went to have a look at the tree, and it is in very close proximity to some stairs, and a wall, and that could be damaged at any time. I mean, that picture you showed doesn't give the same view as the picture that I took, which is a much fuller tree today.
I can, if you like, I could share my screen again, and I can go up the street to get a different perspective of it, if that assists members. Bear with me. Or just bear in mind, though, that as soon as you go up the street now, these photos are from 2009. So the tree is smaller here, but it's in leaf at this time of year. So yeah, I mean, to be fair, officers aren't suggesting that the tree is remote from the dwelling. We accept it's close, but trees, often are close to buildings, and yes, we do take it into account if there's evidence that they are causing damage, but we don't see that evidence is here now, and we have done all we feel we can do to give the applicant the opportunity to substantiate that. So I personally, in my view, particularly with all the issues we discussed at committees recently and will do going forward in respect of biodiversity and nature and the climate, in my opinion, it's not an acceptable argument to remove the tree in case it causes damage in the future. I think it should only be if there's evidence that that's happening.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The applicant suggested that there had been damage in the past, but was asked to evidence this and didn't.
Yeah, we asked the applicant to evidence if you know that, or to get a professional opinion to suggest that previous remedial work had to be done as a consequence of the tree. But yeah, that's what we didn't receive a response to. I mean, it's not, it's a relatively old building. There could be any number of reasons why why some modest remedial work was required at some point in the past.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce, I talked over you then. You were going to say.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry. That's okay. I was just going to. I've got much to say. I'll come back to you if I remember.
Okay, look. Councillor Charles, I didn't give you the opportunity to come back when you spoke. Did you want to, or was there anything were you happy?
Me, Councillor Champion.
Champion, sorry, I apologise.
Sorry, it's just we do have a Councillor Charles. It gets a bit confusing.
Yes, we do. You don't resemble her in the least, honestly.
No, I just noticed that the planning history shows that they were farm buildings, and it was sort of developed in the 80s, and probably the tree was there then. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a suggestion the tree's about 50 years old within the report. Councillor Johnson, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the process quickly. If we maintain the tree preservation order as suggested by officers, is there a further appeal process for the householder going forward, and where does that go? Because obviously, as I understand Ian's explanation, we've asked for evidence that's not being provided. We are therefore recommended to proceed with maintaining the tree preservation order, and I'm just checking what the process is for the household from there. Thank you.
James might correct me here, but it would either be that they can appeal the confirmation of the order, or they could subsequently apply to remove it and as a TPO tree. And if we refuse that, they could appeal that. I would have to double check on whether they can appeal the actual confirmation of the order. I know they could definitely appeal a refusal against works to the tree. So there would definitely be an appeal route, whether it's appealing the confirmation or appealing a subsequent refusal. If they were to come back in again and say we still want to remove it as a TPO tree, they could definitely appeal that.
James, can you enlighten us further?
Yeah, that's right, Ian. And also, as Ian Robinson has mentioned previously, there is a process by which, if at any future time the tree is proven to be having a detrimental effect on the property, then there are provisions within the TPO system for removal at a later date.
Thank you very much. In that case, can I move officers' recommendations? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Charles and Nick. Oh, Councillor Perry, you have your hand up now.
Yeah, sorry, my button wasn't working. Oh, I'm blank now as well. That's all going wrong. Here I am. Yeah, I've been to look at the tree as well. It is basically about half a metre from the building, and it's a tree which is still very young. It will grow to 3 times that height. So although the TPO doesn't save it indefinitely, should we be putting a TPO on a tree that is literally within half a metre of a building, because it seems inevitable that at some point that tree is likely to cause damage to the building that it's next to, and the building is supposed to be protected by the conservation area, and maybe a little bit too much weight is being given to the tree.
I mean, I can comment if it has any value. I don't know that it growing 3 times the size is an accurate assertion. It may well go bigger, of course. In my opinion, if it were 20, 30, 40 years before the tree started to cause damage, and as a homeowner, you can monitor these things. It's not an unduly onerous thing to do. You're aware of the condition of your building. in my opinion, if the tree were to go 20, 30, 40 years and then there was to be an issue, I personally think it's still worth retaining that tree for that length of time. And I couldn't say there would never be an issue. I couldn't say there would definitely be an issue. But I think in instances where there's no certainty that there would be an issue, I think it's reasonable to require the retention of the tree.
Because it's already protected somewhat by the conservation area.
Well, it's not really, because they've asked to remove it. So it's at the point somebody, if you've got a tree that's protected only by the conservation area status, not a TPO, the point at which that person says, I want to remove the tree, that's their notification of their intention to do it. The only protection then is to put a preservation order on it.
So having notified, they can just take it away unless it's a TPO.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so because it's in the conservation area, they have to give notice.
Which they did in April, yeah.
Yeah, and then they can take it down unless we put a TPO up on it.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Nick, Councillor Hodges.
Sorry, I was just going to say.
Can I just bring Councillor Hodges in?
Yeah, of course, Tim.
Yeah, just briefly, Chairman. I don't pretend to be a tree expert. That's why we employ officers who advise us on these things. But being the chair of Barry Cemetery, which we have lots of trees of many different species in, I am aware that silver birch in particular have deep roots rather than spreading roots. So I like to think that this will be less of an issue. But everything can be monitored and everything can change. I'm very happy with the TPO being confirmed, and if things change, I'm sure we'll look at it again.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Councillor Hodges. That was helpful. In that case, it's been moved and seconded. I don't think we need to go to a vote unless somebody is keen to oppose. Councillor Bruce, you want to oppose the TPO? Is there any other indication of opposition? In that case, I'm assuming that everybody else is in favour. We note your opposition, Councillor Bruce, but the TPO is agreed. The officer's recommendations are agreed. Everyone happy? Ian Robinson.
Yeah, sorry, I'm probably premature. Put my hand up. It's about something else, but sorry, I'm probably premature. Do you want to conclude this, and then I'll? I think
we have concluded this part. You have something else to add now, because that's the agenda.
Right. Only to say, just a follow up to the email I sent to members recently, that we are going to be looking to offer training to planning committee members and non-committee members in October, ideally. So just a flag for that, and just to say if members do have any particular topics that they think would, we would be well served by having a chat about in training, let me know.
Councillor Perry.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before to Ian, but it would be really useful to get a subscription to the planner, because it's like £60 per person, which is probably cheaper than training, and then that's a resource that we could use and dip into.
Yeah. Okay. Let me look into that. I'd be keen not to have that instead of training, but if we can do both, then all well and good.
There are items I think certainly I've raised with you, Ian, in terms of a clearer explanation, particularly for newer members, on the process at consultation stage, where local members are asked to comment on planning applications within their wards, and it's become apparent to me from some of the comments that I've heard that some people are unsure about the process and what they can and can't say and how to go about that. And I think that needs further clarification. I'd urge all councillors on this committee to go back to their groups and urge their members to attend this training, because it will help for particularly on the consultation stuff, and what can and can't be said, and when things can be called in, when site visits can be asked properly, that kind of thing. So certainly I'd urge you to support this training. Thank you. Are there any other comments from anybody else? I see no hands. I see no comments. Oh, Mark, you've got your hand up.
I'd just like to say I apologise for being late to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. In that case, thank you all. That's the end of the meeting. Have a really good summer and come back refreshed and whatever. And we'll see you all in September
Can we
at this committee. Sorry, Charles.
can we confirm the next meeting is the 7th of September? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okie doke. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thanks all,
Chair.
bye.
Thank you, Chairman.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Chair.